Dad, I wish you were dead. At least then I'd finally get what I deserve. And the pride in the side. Those words came out of my daughter's mouth like poison, each syllable burning its way into my chest. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I had raised her, loved her, given her everything within my reach. And now she stood in front of me with eyes full of rage and greed. Her name is Madison, my only daughter, the child I once believed would carry my legacy with grace. She had just discovered that the trust fund I built for her future was gone, transferred to her brother after months of her secret theft and lies. The stack of legal documents lay shredded on the floor, her hands still trembling from tearing them apart. She stared at me as if I were the criminal, not her. As if I had betrayed her by refusing to let her rob me again. I wanted to scream that I had worked 30 years in construction, breaking my back under summer heat and winter storms, so she could have ballet lessons, college tuition, a home free of worry. I wanted to remind her of the nights I carried her fevered body in my arms, whispering that everything would be okay. But all I could hear was her voice raw, furious, spitting hatred that no father should ever endure. The silence afterward was heavier than any noise. My heart felt as though it had been ripped open. How had Madison become this person? At what point did love twist into entitlement? And the question that would not leave me since that moment: how do you keep being a father when your own child turns you into her enemy? When people look at my house from the outside, they see a picture of stability. A small 2-story home in a quiet Ohio suburb, with green shutters and a white porch swing that creaks when the wind shifts. Neighbors wave when I mow the lawn. Children ride their bikes down the street, safe and carefree. To anyone else, it looks like the American dream. For years, I thought it was mine too. I built this life brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. I started as a carpenter's apprentice at 17, hauling lumber, sweeping sawdust, and watching men twice my age drink coffee from metal thermoses as if it were gasoline. My knuckles bled, my back ached, but I learned quickly. By 30, I had my own small construction company. By 40, I had employees who called me boss and clients who trusted my word more than a written contract. Every nail I hammered was meant to secure a safer future for my children. When Madison was born, I held her tiny body against my chest and swore I would never let her know the hunger or the fear I'd known as a boy. My father had died early, leaving my mother with 3 mouths to feed. We survived on canned beans and charity handouts. I promised my daughter's life would be different. And it was. Madison grew up in a home where Christmas trees sparkled with too many presents, where birthday cakes always had more candles than guests to blow them out, where school shopping meant new shoes from the nicest store in town. When she was 7, she asked me for a piano after seeing one at her friend's house. I bought it even though I couldn't tell a sharp from a flat. When she was 12, she begged for ballet lessons in the city, and I drove her an hour each way twice a week, clapping like a fool at every recital. Her younger brother, Daniel, was different, quiet, independent. The kind of boy who fixed his own bicycle with duct tape rather than ask me for money. I loved them both. But Madison, she had a way of looking at me with those wide brown eyes, as if I were her hero, her safe place. I could never say no. I remember one summer evening, when Madison was 16, standing in the driveway, arguing with me about a car. She didn't want the used sedan I'd picked out. She wanted the shiny red convertible she had seen at the dealership. I told her it was too much, but her voice cracked when she said, "Dad, everyone at school drives something nice. Do you really want me to be the only one embarrassed?" My heart broke at the thought of her crying alone in a parking lot. So I signed the papers. The convertible was hers. Daniel never complained. He drove an old truck that rattled every time he turned the key. He worked weekends at the grocery store to pay for his own insurance. Sometimes I caught him looking at Madison's car with a mixture of envy and disbelief. But he never said a word. Maybe he understood that his sister had always been the center of my world. Even when Madison went off to college, I kept spoiling her. Tuition, rent, textbooks, late-night phone calls when she wanted extra spending money. All of it flowed from my pocket without hesitation. When she switched majors 3 times and finally settled on hospitality management, I told her it didn't matter. All I wanted was for her to be happy. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, calculating numbers in my head. Mortgage, business expenses, college tuition. Sometimes the math scared me, but then I thought of Madison's laughter, the way she hugged me and whispered, "You're the best dad ever." And I believed it was worth every sacrifice. I didn't notice the cracks forming back then. I didn't see how entitlement was creeping into her smile. How my constant yes was teaching her that money came without limits, without effort. I told myself love meant giving, and I gave until I felt hollow. Still, the memories of those years warm me even now. Summer barbecues with neighbors, Madison dancing barefoot in the backyard while Daniel set off sparklers. Sunday mornings when she would sit at the piano, plunking out tunes while I drank coffee and read the paper. Family vacations at the lake, where Madison insisted on staying in the nicest cabin and Daniel settled for fishing from the dock. If you asked me then, I would have told you my family was perfect, that my sacrifices were shaping a bright, grateful daughter. I would have sworn nothing could ever come between us. I couldn't have been more wrong. The first crack was small, a late fee on a credit card I only used for gasoline and hardware. I stared at the statement, confused, then shrugged. Maybe I had missed a payment while juggling invoices for my crew. I paid it and moved on. I told myself not to worry. Madison moved into a brick apartment near downtown Columbus after college. She called it a fresh start. She said she had a part-time job at an event venue and was picking up weekend shifts at a cafe. Her voice sounded bright every time she talked about independence. She invited me over one Saturday. The place smelled like vanilla candles. There were glossy shopping bags tucked behind the couch. She laughed when I noticed them. "A friend's old things," she said. She was helping to resell them online. I wanted to believe her. A week later, she came by the house and asked if she could borrow my card to fill her tank. She said her bank app had glitched. I watched her drive away in the silver car I still made payments on. She returned an hour later with a hug and the card held high. "Thank you, Dad. You saved me." Her smile made me forget the knot in my stomach. Small charges started to appear. A rideshare at 2 in the morning. A boutique I had never heard of. A hotel authorization that reversed the next day. I called the number on the back of the card. The woman told me it looked like a temporary hold. Probably a mistake. I accepted that answer. It felt easier than asking my daughter a hard question. Madison's social media changed too. Pictures under soft lights. She posed in dresses I knew were expensive even if I could not name the brands. Her nails were always perfect. She captioned one photo with the words, another said, "Collab night." I did not know what that meant. But the comments from strangers told her she looked amazing. I typed a small heart and put down my phone. She brought a new friend to dinner in my kitchen. His name was Luca. He shook my hand and flashed a charming smile. He said he was a promoter at a downtown club and also studying business online. He laughed easily. He called me sir and told stories that sounded polished. He did not offer to clear the dishes. When I reached for the check at a steak place 2 weeks later, he did not argue. Madison squeezed my arm on the way out and whispered that Luca had a big opportunity coming soon. I nodded and paid the valet. One night I walked into my office to grab a pen and found Madison leaning over my desk. She startled and stepped back. She said she had been looking for stamps. She held one between her fingers. So I believed her. After she left, I noticed the drawer where I kept old statements was slightly ajar. I closed it and told myself to stop being paranoid. Her work stories started to shift. She had corporate events one week and none the next. She said her manager changed the schedule without warning. She complained the cafe cut shifts because business was slow. Yet she never looked tired. She always looked ready for a night out. She wore a necklace I knew she could not afford. She said it was a loaner for a photo shoot. I did not ask who made the loan. Packages began arriving at my porch with her name on them. She texted me from a block away, asking me to slide them inside so they would not get stolen. Return labels showed addresses I did not recognize. She said they were try-ons for a collaboration. Most went back. Some stayed. I carried the boxes to her car and told her to drive safe. An email arrived from a supplier I used for my company. It said the shipping address had been updated. I clicked through and saw a line with my street followed by her apartment number in small letters. My hands went cold. I called the supplier and said there had been a mistake. They corrected it within minutes. When I asked Madison about it later, she frowned and said she had never touched anything related to my work. I accepted her answer because her voice was steady. I also changed the password that night. Daniel noticed little things. He asked if his sister was doing all right. He had seen a clip where she toasted champagne at a rooftop bar. He said she was living larger than he understood. I told him to focus on his own bills and his own young marriage. I said his sister would figure it out. He nodded because he is the kind of son who respects the line I draw. He does not push. One Sunday, Madison called with excitement. She said she had to attend a hospitality conference in Chicago and that she could get a discount if I booked with my points. It sounded like something a father should be glad to do. I booked a standard room for 2 nights. Her posts later showed a suite with city views and room service trays. She texted that the front desk had upgraded her for free. I congratulated her and ignored the sting behind my ribs. The next month, my phone pinged with a fraud alert at dawn. There was a small charge at a gas station 3 towns over. Then another at a coffee chain near the interstate. I pressed the option that said it was me, just to silence the sound. Later, Madison said she had taken a friend to an interview and did not want to wake me. I told her I appreciated her honesty and heard my own voice wobble. My neighbor, Mrs. Carter, waved from her porch one afternoon and asked how the wedding planning was going. I laughed and said there was no wedding. She smiled and said she must have misheard Madison telling someone that big celebrations were coming. My laugh sounded hollow as it floated across the trimmed hedges. The last straw of that season was almost nothing. $20 for a digital game. I do not play games. I called Madison and asked if she had ever used my card for an app. She said, of course not. She said it must be a child accidentally buying tokens. I looked around my living room. There were no children. I thanked her anyway and hung up. My chest felt tight the rest of the night. Looking back, the signs were so clear. At the time, they were easy to blur. A father wants to protect the image he built. A father wants the story to be simple. I kept telling myself she was young and messy and that this was a phase. I said the words independence and growth and learning curve. I did not say the harder words. I did not say theft. I did not say lie. I should have asked her to sit down at my kitchen table and bring her bank statements. I should have told her that love is not a credit line. I should have looked her in the eyes and asked who was paying for the world she was showing to strangers online. Instead, I watered the front lawn and fixed the porch swing and waited for things to settle on their own. They did not. They only got sharper. The night before everything broke, I stood at the sink with soapy hands and watched my phone light up with another charge I could not place. It was small. It was easy to ignore. I rinsed the plates and stacked them to dry. I shut off the kitchen light and walked past the framed school pictures on the hall wall. Somewhere between the girl with missing front teeth and the young woman in a white dress at graduation, I had lost the map. I went to bed and told myself tomorrow would be calm. Tomorrow was not calm. The truth arrived on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I had just finished a roofing estimate and sat down at my desk with a mug of coffee. The sun slanted through the blinds, striping the papers with pale gold. I opened my laptop to pay a supplier, typed in my credentials, and felt my stomach sink as the numbers loaded. The balance was off. Not slightly. Thousands of dollars had vanished. I clicked through the transactions one by one. A flight to Los Angeles, a resort in Palm Springs, a high-end restaurant that served plates no bigger than my hand. The amounts stacked together like bricks closing me inside a wall. I scrolled faster, my breath quickening. Each charge carried my name, my card, my responsibility. But I had not set foot in any of those places. I reached for the phone and dialed the bank. A calm voice read the list back to me. Flights, hotels, rental cars. Do any of these look unfamiliar? She asked. My throat felt dry. All of them looked unfamiliar. Yet each pulsed with a terrible familiarity. Madison. She had asked for stamps, for gas, for little favors. Now the screen showed a vacation built from my labor, carried on my shoulders without my consent. I closed my eyes and pressed my palm to my forehead. For a moment I prayed I was wrong. Maybe it was fraud. Maybe someone had stolen my identity. I almost begged the representative to tell me that. But when she read the reservation name, I heard my daughter's full name clear and undeniable. Madison Harper. My hand trembled as I hung up. I stared at the framed photo on my desk, Madison at age 10, holding a trophy from a school science fair, her smile wide enough to fill the room. I remembered how proud she had been, how she jumped into my arms that day. The little girl in that picture had just stolen more than $10,000 from me. I tried to steady myself. I pulled out old folders, flipped through records, tuition checks, car payments, deposits, all the ways I had lifted her. I stacked them on the desk until the weight of them felt like lead. Then I opened the next page of my bank statement and nearly dropped the folder. Jewelry stores, designer boutiques, charges spaced weeks apart, small enough to slide under my notice, steady enough to form a pattern. I sat back in my chair. My chest felt like it was caving in. She had not slipped once. She had been siphoning from me for months, maybe longer. Every smile, every hug, every "love you, Dad" echoed in my ears. Suddenly brittle. Were those moments real? Or were they rehearsed to keep me blind? That night, I couldn't eat. I poured whiskey into a glass, but it tasted like nothing. I walked through the house, turning on lights, turning them off again. Restless in every room. In the kitchen, I noticed the crayon drawings still stuck to the refrigerator with fading magnets, her crooked hearts, and stick figure families. I leaned my forehead against the cool metal, whispering, "Where did I lose you?" The next morning, the confirmation came without disguise. Madison called, her voice bubbling with excitement. She said she and Luca had checked into a suite with a balcony that overlooked the desert mountains. She described the sparkling pool, the champagne waiting on ice. I held the phone tight, my knuckles white, and listened as if nothing was wrong. When she finished, I asked one question. How much did it cost? Sweetheart? There was a pause, a tiny crack in her tone. She laughed lightly and said they had saved, that Luca's bonus had covered most of it. But I knew because the receipt glowed on my laptop screen while she spoke. The same suite, the same date, paid with my card. When we hung up, I sat in silence. The evidence surrounded me. Undeniable, crushing. I had built a life on trust, and my own daughter had shattered it. For years, I had told myself she was just young, just learning. But this was not a mistake. It was a choice to steal, a choice to lie, a choice to see her father not as a man but as an endless wallet. The discovery was complete, and with it, something inside me broke that could never be fixed. I practiced what I would say a dozen times before dialing her number. Each version collapsed in my throat. Should I be stern? Should I be gentle? Should I remind her of all the sacrifices I had made? My heart thudded as the line rang. When Madison finally answered, her voice was thick with laughter. Music played faintly in the background. "Dad, can I call you back later? We're just about to order dessert." No, sweetheart," I said, steadying my tone. "This can't wait. Are you using my credit card for this trip?" The line went silent. Not even the music carried through. I counted the seconds. 4, 5, 6. Then she exhaled sharply, the way she used to when I caught her sneaking cookies as a child. "What? Dad, why would you think that?" I closed my eyes, gripping the armrest of my chair. "Because the charges are sitting right in front of me. Flights, hotel, restaurants, all on my card. And that's impossible." She shot back quickly. "Maybe someone hacked you. You should call the bank. It is Minder." Her lie was smooth, practiced. I could almost see her eyes rolling, her lips forming that defensive pout. "I already called the bank," I said. "They confirmed the reservation under your name. It is Minder." Her voice sharpened, defensive. "Dad, you're being paranoid. Luca paid for everything. I told you he got a bonus. Why can't you just believe me?" "Because the bonus was a story. Because I had the receipts. Because I knew my daughter's voice better than I knew my own heartbeat. But I forced myself to stay calm." "Madison, listen to me. If you needed help, you could have asked. I would have helped. But stealing from me, lying to me—" "Stop it," she snapped, cutting me off. "God, you always do this. You act like I'm some criminal when all I want is to live my life. Do you have any idea how suffocating it is to have a father who watches every penny?" Her words hit me like stones. I had worked nights, weekends, taken jobs in the freezing rain, just to make sure she never felt the hunger I had known as a child. Now she accused me of suffocating her. "Madison," I whispered, "I am not trying to suffocate you. I'm trying to understand why the girl I raised, the girl who used to hug me after every school play, would take from me and lie about it. Why? Why?" There was a long pause. Then a small laugh, bitter and cold. "You don't get it, do you? It's family money anyway. What's yours will be mine someday. I'm just getting it early. Have a lowing." The casual cruelty in her tone made my chest tighten. She said it as if it were natural, as if my years of sweat and sacrifice were nothing more than a fund waiting to be claimed. "So you admit it," I said quietly. "I admit nothing. I'm just saying you're being dramatic. Can't you be happy for me? For once, Luca and I are building a future. Why do you have to ruin everything?" I wanted to shout, to shake her through the phone. Instead, my voice broke with something worse than anger. "You've turned me into your enemy, Madison, and I don't know how we got here." She didn't answer. The line went dead. I sat in my silent living room, the phone heavy in my hand. My reflection stared back from the darkened television screen. A tired man with lines carved deep around his eyes. I had tried to confront her with love, with reason. All I received in return was denial, manipulation, and blame. The confrontation was over, but nothing had been resolved. The daughter I adored was slipping further away, and for the first time in my life, I realized she might never come back. The night after that call, I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a cold cup of coffee. The house hummed with summer air. I made a list. Close the cards. Call the bank. Remove Madison as an authorized user. Change passwords. Call the hotel. I wrote each step so my hand would not shake. At dawn, I started. The bank agent read back the charges. She spoke in a soft voice, as if I were grieving. I suppose I was. I asked her to freeze the card and issue a new one. I asked her to remove the authorized user named Madison Harper. Keystrokes clicked through the line. Then she said it was done. I called the airline. I read confirmation numbers from the statements. The man on the phone said the tickets could be canceled with a fee. I told him to proceed. I called the hotel. A woman confirmed a suite that matched the photos Madison had described. Her tone changed when I said I was the card holder and the booking was not authorized. She canceled the reservation. There would be penalties. I said that was fine. By noon, my inbox was full. Canceled. Refund pending. Partial refund issued. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt hollow. I pictured Madison in a lobby, her smile stitched by threads. Luca at her shoulder. Annoyance turning to anger. It was done. There would be no more charges in my name. I opened the safe and pulled out the folder with my will and the trust I had funded when Madison turned 25. I called my attorney, a careful man named Barrett. He listened while I told him what happened. When I finished, he asked one question. Are you ready to make this real? I said yes. Suspend the trust. Redesignate the funds to Daniel. Update the will. Barrett told me to come by that afternoon with proof. I printed the pages with the charges and drove in silence. At a stoplight, I saw a dad walk a little girl across the street. She swung his hand and hopped on the painted lines. For a moment, I could not breathe. Barrett's office was quiet. He read my notes and the statements. He asked if I was sure. I told him I was. The trust could be changed with notice. The will could be signed today. He slid the documents across the desk and placed a pen within reach. My hand hovered over my name. I signed. On the drive home, the sky grew heavy. Rain spotted the windshield, then came down in sheets. I sat in the car and watched water slide down the glass. I had taken the step I avoided for years. I had chosen to protect what belonged to me and what belonged to Daniel. The phone rang as I set the folder on the hall table. Madison. I let it ring twice before I answered. Her voice was high and brittle. She asked what was wrong with the card. She said the hotel refused the room and that the airline app showed a refund. She asked if I had called anyone. I told her the truth. Yes. Silence spilled through the line. Then came the heat. She said I had humiliated her. She said the front desk looked at her like she was trash. She said Luca was furious. She asked how a father could do this to his own child. I wanted to tell her that a father must also protect himself. I only said this. I cannot fund what you will not be honest about. She called me cruel. She told me I would regret this. She said she would never forgive me. The line went dead. I leaned against the wall and listened to the rain. I thought of every day I had driven her to lessons. I thought of Daniel handing me a wrench when he was 9. I thought of the promise I made to be the father mine could not be. I changed the locks on my accounts that night. New passwords. New security questions. I removed stored cards from apps on my phone. I set alerts for every charge above $5. I put the old album with crayon drawings back into a box. I did each task slowly. When I finished, the house felt different. Bare. Honest. That night, I printed a letter. It was not angry. It was clear. I told Madison she had taken money that was not hers. I told her that I loved her and that love could not live where lies did. I told her the trust was suspended and that my will had been changed. I told her that if she wanted to rebuild, she would need to bring me a plan and proof of income. I told her she could call me every Sunday at 5 and that I would answer. I mailed it in the morning. 3 days passed. My phone flashed with texts that swung between apology and rage. I answered none of them. I walked job sites and signed checks. On the third night, I sat on the porch and watched the street lamps glow. I thought about calling Madison. I did not. When I went inside, a message waited in my inbox. It was an airline itinerary from her address. It showed a return flight home that morning. My chest tightened. She was coming back to town. I shut the laptop and checked the deadbolt. I stood in the doorway of her old room. The walls were pale where the posters had been. I whispered a small prayer. I slept lightly. I woke to the sound of tires on wet pavement and a car door closing. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new text lit the screen. I am outside. We need to talk. My hands shook. I sat up and felt the weight of what I had done press through me. The breaking point was here. I walked to the front door and reached for the knob. She stood in the doorway with rain on her shoulders. Mascara streaked like ink across her face. Behind her, Luca lingered in the driveway. His arms crossed, his jaw set tight. Madison stepped inside without asking. The smell of expensive perfume mixed with the damp air. For a moment, I only saw the little girl who used to run down this same hallway shouting my name after school. But her eyes were sharp now, glittering with fury. "How could you?" she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you did to me?" The hotel laughed in my face. The airline stranded us. Everyone looked at me like I was a fraud. "You humiliated me." I closed the door slowly, my heart pounding against my ribs. "Madison, you humiliated yourself when you used my card without permission. Is not his life." Luca stepped forward. His shoes squeaked on the entry rug. "You could have handled this privately. Sir, you didn't have to embarrass her in front of strangers. Is not his life." I met his gaze. Strangers didn't steal from me. Strangers didn't lie to me. She did. Is not his life. Madison's voice broke, rising in a pitch I had not heard since her teenage years. "You're supposed to protect me. Dad, you're supposed to love me unconditionally, not punish me like some criminal. I'm your daughter." With 8, I felt the words slash into me. Love. Unconditional. They echoed with the weight of decades. I thought of nights I carried her through fevers, of the first car I bought her, of the tuition checks I signed without blinking. My throat burned. "I do love you," I said softly. "But love is not a free pass to steal." With 8 of the scarred, she laughed bitterly, tears mixing with her makeup. "Steal? You act like I robbed a stranger. It's family money. One day it will all be mine anyway. Why wait?" The entitlement in her voice hollowed me out. I looked past her to Daniel's photograph on the mantel. My son who worked overtime shifts, who never asked for more than he needed. The contrast was unbearable. "Not anymore," I said quietly. "The trust is gone. The will is changed. Your choices left me no other path." Has this? Her eyes widened, horror spreading across her face. She looked as if I had struck her. You gave it to him, didn't you?" To Daniel, in a liver. I didn't answer, but the silence told her everything. She let out a scream that rattled the windows. "You always loved him more. You never cared about me the way you cared about him. Everything was a lie." In a liver, I shook my head, grief heavier than rage. "No. Madison, I gave you everything. Too much. Maybe. And I took Daniel for granted because he never demanded. That is my shame. But don't twist this. This isn't favoritism. This is consequence. He warned him. Luca muttered something under his breath. A curse aimed at me, and placed his hand on her shoulder. Come on, babe. We don't need him. We'll figure it out. He warned him. But Madison pulled away. She collapsed onto the couch, clutching her hair, sobbing so hard her body shook. The sound tore through me. My knees ached to kneel beside her, to pull her close, to promise it would be all right. But I stayed standing, because it was not all right. Minutes passed. The storm outside softened to a drizzle. Luca grew restless, pacing the living room, muttering about wasted time and lost money. Madison finally raised her head, her face streaked and swollen. You've destroyed me, Dad. Do you understand? You've ruined my future. I'll never forgive you. She heavily won on this. Her words were sharper than any blade. But my answer came steady. If your future depends on stealing from your own father, then it needed to be destroyed. She heavily won on this. She let out another sob. This one quieter, almost childlike. She whispered something I nearly missed. I hate you. For self, I turned away, my chest caving in, my eyes stinging. I walked to the kitchen and gripped the counter until my knuckles whitened. I hated myself too, for failing to raise her better, for letting things rot until this moment. When I returned, the couch was empty. The front door stood open. Madison and Luca were gone, their footsteps swallowed by the wet night. Only the echo of her words remained, circling the rooms of the house I had built for her. That was the fallout. Not just the rage, not just the accusations. It was the silence that followed the space where love used to live, now filled with bitterness. And as I locked the door, I knew the conflict had only begun. The first punch landed online. I woke to a flood of notifications, a river of names I did not know. Madison had posted a video the night before. She filmed herself in a motel room with buzzing lights and a stained carpet. Her voice shook as she looked into the camera and said her father had sabotaged her life. She called me controlling. She called me cruel. She said I weaponized money to keep her under my thumb. She added tags. She added a song that made her eyes shine with tears. By breakfast, the story had spread. A neighbor texted me a link. A client forwarded the clip with a question mark. My company page received a 1-star review from someone named Kyle who lived 3 states away. He wrote that I was a monster who punished his daughter for being happy. 5 strangers liked his review within minutes. My phone buzzed without stopping. I put it face down on the counter and stared at the wallpaper, where the sunlight made a pale square. Madison posted again at noon. This time she showed screenshots of a bank alert. She claimed I had meddled with her accounts. She said I cut her off to teach her a lesson. She said I loved power more than family. She wrote a paragraph about trauma. She used words that do not belong to simple disagreements. She said survivor. She said abusive. She said toxic. I could have typed my side. I could have uploaded the charges with timestamps. I could have posted the letter I mailed with quiet terms and Sunday calls. I did not. I took screenshots and saved them to a folder. I printed each post and slid them into a binder. I wrote the dates on the corners in pencil. I brewed coffee and tried to keep my hands from shaking. By evening, the comments had a rhythm. People said I was jealous of my daughter. People said I had control issues. People said she should take me to court. A few voices asked for proof. Most did not. It felt like standing in a stadium while a crowd roared for a team that did not know the rules. I closed the app and sat in the dim kitchen. The clock ticked with its small, patient sound. The offline world changed with it. At the hardware store, A young clerk watched me with careful eyes. He whispered to his coworker while he bagged screws. On the job site, a supplier asked if everything was all right at home. He said it kindly, but he did not meet my eyes. At church, on Sunday, a woman I had never spoken to squeezed my arm and told me forgiveness is holy. I nodded and could not speak. Daniel called after dinner. He had seen a copy of Madison's video on a friend's phone. He asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. He did not believe me. He asked if I needed him to post a defense. I told him no. He said staying silent might look like guilt. I said silence can also look like dignity. He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked if I had kept records. I told him the binder was already thick. 2 clients postponed projects within 3 days. One said their budget suddenly changed. The other admitted their board wanted to avoid controversy. He said he hoped I understood. I said I did. I hung up and pressed my palms on the desk. The wood felt cool and steady under my hands. I reminded myself that a storm is still a storm even when you cannot see the rain. Madison's friend group piled on. One posted a thread about fathers who use money as a leash. Another said she had watched me belittle Madison at dinner. That never happened. I read the words twice and felt a hollow ache open behind my ribs. Luca posted a picture of a door with peeling paint and wrote that real love does not lock people out. The comments applauded him. His smile in the profile photo looked practiced. Then came the neighborhood forum. Someone shared the video with the caption "Local business owner exposed by his own daughter." The thread filled fast. A man I built a deck for 3 summers ago asked for patience and facts. Another neighbor replied that patterns do not lie. Mrs. Carter, from across the street, wrote a simple line. I have only seen him mow lawns and help with groceries. It was drowned by a wave of new opinions within minutes. I learned how small a town can feel. In the grocery aisle, a mother guided her child around me the way people move around a fallen branch. At the gas station, a teenager with a phone pretended to pump while he recorded me. I saw the glow of the screen in the reflection on the window. I finished filling the tank and drove away with my jaw clenched. I made one call that night. Barrett listened while I summarized the public mess. He told me to keep collecting evidence. He told me not to engage in arguments. He said a clean record is more powerful than any caption. He asked if I was safe. I said yes. He asked about Daniel. I said my son had my house key and would stop by if I needed him. The line was quiet for a breath. Barrett said we should be ready for the next step. The next step arrived as a knock. Not from police. From a reporter with shiny shoes and a smile that did not reach his eyes. He stood on my porch and asked if I wanted to comment on the accusations. He said I could give my side now before things escalated. He held a small recorder and a legal pad. I told him there was nothing to say. He looked disappointed and left a card. In the evening, a blog posted a piece with a headline that used my name and the word scandal in the same sentence. My business website received 2 more 1-star reviews. Both profile pictures were blank. I told myself to focus on what I could control. I cooked simple meals. I swept the porch. I went to the shop early and checked inventory twice. I called my crews and briefed them on schedules. I met Daniel for coffee and let him talk without trying to fix his worries. I still checked the binder each night. It grew heavy. On the 5th day, Madison posted a final video. She said she was thinking about legal options. She said abusers never change unless forced. She said she would fight for her life back. The comments cheered her with little hearts. I felt something inside me go very still. Not hard, not soft, just still. The public had chosen its story. The private battle would have to speak in another language. Documents, dates, numbers, calm. I called Barrett again. I asked for an appointment. He said tomorrow morning was open. I hung up and stood in the quiet house. The public storm raged outside in screams and whispers. The real storm was about to move into a room where voices echo less and words carry more weight. I placed the binder by the door and turned off the lights. Barrett's office smelled faintly of leather and old books. He shook my hand firmly, then gestured for me to sit. The binder I carried thudded against his desk. He adjusted his glasses and asked me to start at the beginning. I spoke slowly, laying out each step: the unauthorized charges, the canceled reservations, the online campaign that had turned neighbors into judges. As I spoke, Barrett flipped through the printed posts, nodding grimly. "She's preparing for escalation," he said. "If she takes this to court, the accusations will sting more than the theft. Emotional abuse, financial coercion, those terms carry weight. They're zealotry." I swallowed hard. "But they're lies, and no do eight. Lies repeated enough become a story people believe," he replied. "That's why our defense has to be undeniable. We don't argue feelings. We argue facts. And no do eight." He asked for every receipt I had, every tuition check, every car payment, every transfer I had ever made in Madison's name. I reached into the folder and laid them out. 30 years of sacrifice turned into evidence. Barrett's eyebrows rose as he added the figures. "This is a history of support, not abuse. We'll build from here." And Neferdo, the next week blurred into meetings and paperwork. Daniel came with me once, his hands tucked deep in his pockets. He read the posts about his sister in silence, then shook his head. "Dad, I don't know who she's become." I saw the guilt in his eyes, as if loyalty to me meant betrayal of his sister. I told him he was not choosing sides. He was standing with the truth. A letter arrived 3 days later. Thick envelope, bold print. My stomach dropped as I opened it. It was a notice of intent. Madison was filing a claim against me. She accused me of years of psychological control, of withholding money as punishment, of destroying her livelihood by canceling the trip. She demanded damages of $250,000. I read the words 3 times. Each one felt like a nail hammered into my chest. Barrett remained calm. "This was expected. We'll respond." He tapped the binder. "Your records will carry more weight than her stories." He said it with another, but outside the office, nothing felt steady. At the grocery store, whispers trailed behind me. At the diner, 2 men leaned over their coffee cups, glancing at me until I left. Even Mrs. Carter across the street looked uncertain when she waved, her smile too thin. I spent nights at the kitchen table, papers spread before me. I traced each dollar I had given, each choice I had made for her benefit. They no longer looked like gifts. They looked like exhibits in a trial. I wondered when love had turned into evidence. Daniel called again. He wanted to testify if needed. He said he had seen me pay her bills, seen me carry her through storms. His voice broke when he added, "I don't want to destroy her, Dad, but I can't let her destroy you." I closed my eyes and thanked him, my throat too tight for words. The first court date loomed, but I was not only fighting for money. I was fighting for my name, my dignity, the memory of a father who had tried. Late one night, as I stacked the papers back into the binder, I whispered into the empty house, "This is not what family was meant to be." They were Managod Shakstarv Rear, and yet here we were, turning blood into case files, love into depositions. The moral battle hurt worse than the legal one. I had to accept that protecting myself meant painting my own daughter as the thief she was. The law would see numbers. I would still see a little girl with crayon hearts. The confrontation came not in a courtroom, but in my own living room. It was a gray afternoon. The kind where the sky presses down and makes every sound heavier. I had just set a stack of legal papers on the coffee table when the door rattled with pounding fists. I opened it to find Madison and Luca standing there. Rain dripping from their jackets. Her eyes were wild. His jaw was tight. "We need to talk," Madison said, pushing past me into the house. Luca followed, uninvited. His voice was low but sharp. "You're going to fix this. You're going to call your lawyer and take back what you did." "Oh." I closed the door calmly. "No, I won't." "Oh." Madison spun on me. Her face blotched from crying. "You've ruined me. Do you understand? You've destroyed everything I had. The trust fund. The inheritance, you handed it to Daniel like I never mattered." I steadied my voice. "You mattered more than anything. That's why I gave and gave until I couldn't anymore. But you turned love into entitlement. You turned trust into theft." Everyone alonged. Her chest rose and fell in sharp breaths. "I only took what should have been mine. You promised. Dad. You told me you'd take care of me forever." Everyone alonged. "I promised to love you," I said. "Not to let you rob me blind." Everyone alonged. Luca stepped closer. His fists clenched. "She's right. You owe her. Without you, she has nothing. If you don't reverse this, we'll make sure everyone knows what kind of father you are." "Closey." I picked up the binder from the table and held it out. "Go ahead. Here are the statements. Here are the checks. The deposits. The cars. The tuition. Show anyone you like. Let them see 30 years of sacrifice and 6 months of theft." "Closey." Madison's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Her tears smeared the ink. "You kept records? Every dollar? You were preparing to betray me this whole time." "Closey." "No," I said softly. "I was preparing to defend myself, because I knew one day you'd force me to. I would." The clode. She dropped the binder and sank onto the couch, her sobs echoing off the walls. Luca paced like a caged animal. "This is insane. You can't just erase her future." I wooded the clode. I looked him square in the eye. "Her future is hers to build, not mine to hand over." I wooded the clode. For a long moment, the room was only the sound of Madison's weeping. Then, she lifted her face, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I hate you," she whispered. "I'll never forgive you." From there, my heart broke again. But I stood my ground. "Maybe one day you'll understand. Maybe one day you'll see that love is not money, and family is not theft. Until then, my door is closed to your lies." From there, Luca cursed under his breath and pulled her to her feet. They stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled on the wall. I stood in the silence that followed, my body trembling, my soul aching. I had faced my daughter and told her the truth she didn't want to hear. The final confrontation was over, but the wound it left behind would bleed for the rest of my life. The house stayed quiet after they left. I stood in the hallway and listened to the way silence stretched from room to room. I brewed coffee I did not drink. I opened Madison's old window to let in air that smelled like wet earth. I told myself I had done the right thing. My chest did not believe me yet. In the days that followed, I worked small jobs with my crew and kept my voice steady. I checked a roof repair. I measured a porch for a family that had saved for years. I tied down ladders and swept up nails. My body knew the rhythm. My mind kept drifting to the couch where my daughter cried and called me a thief. The word lingered, like smoke. It took a long time to fade. Some neighbors waved, but their hands were tight. Others pretended not to see me. Mrs. Carter brought cookies and said, "People talk when they are bored." I thanked her and set the plate beside the binder on the hall table. 2 clients who had paused projects called to restart. One said he trusted me when I built his first deck and he trusts me now. Daniel visited on Sunday. He let himself in with the spare key. We sat at the table with coffee. He asked how I was sleeping. I said better. He asked if I wanted him to post a message. I told him no. Then he asked a single hard question. Had I loved his sister more than him? I told him the truth. I loved them both. I had loved them in different ways. With Madison, I mistook love for rescue. I threw money at her problems because I could not bear to watch her fail. With him, I mistook strength for independence. I let him carry loads alone because he never complained. I told him I was sorry for both mistakes. Daniel nodded and gripped my hand. That night I wrote a letter I did not send. I told Madison that I loved her. I told her that love without truth becomes a chain. I wrote that I would answer on Sundays at 5. I wrote that I would not fund lies again. The letter sat on my dresser for a week. Then I folded it and placed it in the top drawer next to a photo of her with a gap-toothed smile. The legal steps moved forward with the slow pace of institutions. Barrett filed our response. He said our records were clear. He said the law would see numbers first and feelings second. I kept saving every post and every text. Some days it felt like building a wall. Other days it felt like stacking bricks around a memory so it would not blow away. I started walking after dinner. I left my phone on the counter and took the long loop around the lake. I listened to geese and the soft slap of water against the bank. Moving made the ache bearable. I spoke out loud sometimes. Promises. I promised to be honest even when it hurt. I promised to stop paying for peace with money. I promised to offer Daniel the same softness I had given his sister. I promised to offer myself some of that softness too. There were setbacks. A rumor at the supply yard said I had been arrested. A note on my truck said, "Fathers like you deserve to be alone." I threw it away. I reminded myself that strangers do not know my kitchen or my porch swing, or the smell of earth after rain. One evening, I found the old piano bench in the garage. The finish had dulled. I cleaned it and brought it inside. I placed it where the piano used to sit. Then I sat on the empty bench. The silence around me felt like a choir. I saw Madison at 7 with a crooked braid. I let myself grieve the child who had lived in this house and the woman who had walked out of it. I also let myself think about the future. Not grand plans. Quiet ones. Dinner with Daniel and his wife on Fridays. Fishing at the lake once a month. Paying attention when my hands start to shake and setting the tools down. Saying no when no is needed, and yes when yes is clean. I am an ordinary man. I build things that keep weather out. I cannot fix everything I love. I can keep the roof from leaking. On the second Sunday after the confrontation, my phone rang at 5 on the dot. The screen showed no name. I answered and heard a breath. Then a voice so small I almost missed it. "Dad." I did not speak. She said she had moved out of Luca's place. She said she had gotten a full-time position at the event venue and had taken an extra shift on weekends. She said she did not want money. She only wanted to tell me she was trying. I closed my eyes and let the chair hold my weight. I told her thank you for calling. I told her I was listening. I told her I would be here on Sundays. I did not offer money. I did not ask for apologies. I let the silence between us be a bridge instead of a hole. When the call ended, I sat in the fading light and felt something gentle settle in the house. Not relief. Not joy. A smaller thing. Room for hope. The wound is still open. It will close in time if we treat it with air and clean hands. I know now that love without boundaries is not love. It is a slow leak that rots the beams you cannot see. I will not let my home rot. I will mend what I can. I will accept what I cannot. I will keep watch. If my daughter chooses the path that leads back here, I will open the door. If she does not, I will keep living a life that tells the truth. The house is quiet tonight. The rain has stopped. and the porch swing sways gently in the cool wind. I sit in my chair with the binder of documents closed at last, resting under my hand like a stone I no longer need to carry. The battle is not truly finished. There will be more hearings, more whispers. But inside me, something has settled. I think about the arc of it all. A father who gave too much. A daughter who learned to take without asking. A son who carried his own weight with quiet dignity. And me. A man who mistook generosity for love until it nearly broke me. When Madison's voice trembled through the phone last Sunday. When she said she was trying, I felt the faintest spark of the girl who once held my hand at the fairgrounds. Sticky with cotton candy. Her eyes wide at the lights. That memory does not erase the betrayal. It does not erase the lies. But it reminds me that beneath the anger, there was once love, and perhaps, in time, there can be again. I know now that love must be steady, not endless. Love must be honest, not indulgent. Love is not money, not cars, not vacations. Love is presence. It is a roof that does not leak, a chair at the table that waits for you, a father who will not fund your lies but will listen to your truth. I walk to Madison's old room and stand in the doorway. The walls are bare, but I imagine the posters she once taped there. The laughter that once filled this space. I whisper into the emptiness. I still love you. I will always love you. But you must learn to love me with honesty. Or not at all. And sighed, save then me. Downstairs. Daniel's photo smiles from the mantel. I see in his eyes the proof that not all has been lost. One child may have strayed, but another has held steady. My legacy will not be measured in dollars, but in the integrity I pass on. When I turn out the lights and the house falls into shadow, I feel the ache of what has been broken, but I also feel the strength of what remains. I have chosen truth. I have chosen boundaries. I have chosen to keep the door open only for the daughter who finds her way back with clean hands and a true heart. Until then, the silence will stay, not as punishment, but as space for growth. And if that day never comes, I will still have lived as a father who learned late. But in time that sometimes love must mean saying no. The story is not over. It never is. When blood ties stretch across years. But tonight, as the wind brushes against the shutters and the quiet settles deep, I know this. I will not be her victim anymore. I will be her father still, waiting with love that demands truth.